So hi everyone, welcome to our latest episode. As you know, February is LGBT plus History Month. So we're in the UK, important to note. So I'm here with Lo.
Hi.
And we're going to be talking about some of our favourite bi-historical figures. So do you want to start us off?
Yeah, so I actually make and sell these t-shirts with some of my fave bi figures. Some of them are historical, some of them more modern, like Janelle Monáe down the bottom there. Actually identifies as pan, and back in January, they kind of came out on Twitter as non-binary. They joined in the I am non-binary hashtag, which is really awesome.
Yeah, it was a really positive hashtag as well.
Yeah, it was really cool.
So, do you want to tell us which one's one of your favourites? Because there's a lot of names.
There's a lot of names.
All of them.
So one of my favourites is definitely Frida Kahlo. I think she's a really inspiring woman anyway. I think her image has been bastardized quite a lot to represent things that she didn't actually stand for. So, for example, she was like a fervent communist. She actually is rumoured to have had an affair with, I think, Lenin. Either Lenin or Marx she's rumoured to have had an affair with, which is crazy. She also had an affair with Josephine Baker, who is also on the t-shirt. She was a disability activist. So she was actually involved in a bus accident, and then after that she didn't have the full use of her legs for the rest of her life, which is kind of where a lot of her love of painting came from, because she would kind of paint herself in places that she kind of wanted to go but maybe felt like she couldn't. She also was like against a lot of beauty standards, especially European beauty standards. She was a woman of colour. She had, the thick brows. She had facial hair. She was very like a prominent figure for women, reclaiming our hairiness. And for her to be like bisexual I think she's an amazing person.
Yeah, because it's interesting that that's Frida Kahlo is one of my favourites as well. And it's for all of those reasons, I thought they were a really incredible person, because they represented a lot of different things and they had a lot of different overlapping identities, because like they're bisexual, they're a person of colour, they were gender non-conforming, they were also disabled. So it's a lot of different things that come together, and it can be quite hard to have all of those identities at once. So the way that she went about being so positive about all of those things and really sort of fighting the system at every given point, I thought was really inspiring to look at. And I actually went to the exhibition at the V&A about Frida Kahlo, and I noted to someone I know who did a few things at the V&A, and I said that it was actually quite disappointing that it showed a lot of these things really well, but it didn't really touch on her sexuality. It kind of minimized it in a lot of ways. And it kind of just put it down to like a little bit of text here and there, and it wasn't really shown in the way that a lot of the other parts were. And I talked to the person at the V&A about it, and they were like, I was aware of that, I saw it afterwards. And we actually had a really big discussion about it because of the person who curated it and the way it was done, and we weren't happy with it either. And so we flagged this up, and I was like, I'm so glad that you exist as a human to flag that up.
For me personally as well, kind of a similar topic to that is when I was like probably about 12-ish doing art in secondary school, Frida Kahlo was like one of my first introductions to somebody who was like multi-gender attracted. And again, my teacher kind of mentioned, she spoke about how she was a lover of women and was very close to some women. I don't think she ever said that she like had an affair with women, and she definitely never used the word bisexual. But she did talk about her rumoured, I think she maybe called it like deep admiration for other women, which we all kind of knew meant she had an affair with women. And for me, that was like one of the first times that I saw a woman who loved men and women and maybe gender non-conforming people. We don't have confirmation of that. So that's why she's also a really important character in my life, because she was one of my first examples of like a successful bisexual woman. And I also had a big crush on my history in my art teacher. So it was kind of a combination of like be like, why do I like my art teacher so much? Why do I seek her approval so desperately? I'm bad at art. Like, I'm really bad at art, but I want her to like me. And then her telling me about Frida Kahlo and how much Frida Kahlo was really close with these other women. And I was like, I think that might explain it. So that's why she's such an important person in my life as well.
So for me, I think one of the really important ones was Freddie Mercury. I think it's in a similar way to Frida Kahlo, but the opposite. Just like how we always see with bi men and bi women. It's always the opposite. It's always about male attraction. Freddie Mercury was gay washed. So instead of it being, oh, they're a lover of multiple genders and lover of, like, they'll have sex with anyone, it was, oh, all of the stuff that Freddie Mercury did with women was never really talked about, because I remember the first time I was ever introduced to Freddie Mercury was through Queen, and it wasn't until ages later that I found out that he was gay and he died of AIDS. And he was really important in that perspective. Like, he wasn't he wasn't actively political, but he was political in the way that he acted within society. So for someone to be so open about the fact that they live with AIDS, for someone to be so openly queer in a lot of the stuff that they do, was so interesting to see. But I never saw them as bisexual. And it's because that part was just completely removed. And it wasn't until ages later that I then found out that they were actually not actually married, but married to a woman, because that's how he saw himself. He left everything to someone called Mary Austin when he died. And he said very openly that Mary Austin was the love of his life, wrote songs about her, and when he died, left everything to her because they had a common law marriage and everything would have been hers anyway, because he essentially thought of her as his wife. And a lot of that just seems to be put to one side as this idea that he was somehow scared of being openly gay because somehow that scared him being bi, which is a common thing that bisexual people have it easier, but he very much didn't, and bisexual people don't. And I really love the way, and I find that whole idea baffling anyway, because he was so openly queer.
Yeah.
In his music videos, he dressed up as a woman.
He's like in full drag in a lot of
them.
Yeah.
And there's so many outfits that will flick up on the screen of just him having these glorious capes and these crowns, and he was a full queen about everything. But what I also love is that the other part that tends to get moved from who he is his heritage. So he has Parsi heritage, so he's South Asian, and his actual name is Farooq Bulsara. I probably didn't pronounce that correctly. And to see someone who is South Asian and very openly queer and very flamboyant and very feminine, but at the same time was just embraced themselves so openly. It's so nice to see that there was someone like that in history that I can relate to in so many different ways. That's why Freddie Mercury is like one of my idols, and I've spoken about a lot of this in Twitter as well.
I actually saw, I watched a really bad documentary about Freddie Mercury. It was very sensationalized. They played off his relationship with Mary Austin as being like part of his like party boy lifestyle, because in the documentary it showed how they kind of had a flat together in Berlin. They would sleep in the same bed, but then sometimes they'd be joined by other men in that bed. And so it played it off as kind of like, oh, Freddie was so out there. He was such a party boy that he was living with this woman and they were bringing men back, but like he was only really into the men, and she was there kind of as like a friend who he had sex with and lived with. And I was like, some people do have friends that they live with and have sex with, but it doesn't seem like that was the case with Freddie. Like, it seemed like he genuinely, and also having sex with women and men, that's bisexuality.
Yeah. And it is very that, like a lot of people.
And non-binary people.
It is very that. It's very much this idea that because of the fact that there were so many sexual experiences that you had with men, that somehow that diminished his experiences with women. And it's just not true at all, because that's not how bisexuality works. The reason why he might not have slept with many women after Mary Austin might have been because he was so attached to Mary Austin. Like, he felt like if he slept with another woman, it would somehow disregard that. Not like how, I mean, sleeping with men would also do that, but that's neither here nor there. He was known to be attracted to a lot of different people. Removed from Mary Austin, he was rumoured to be with a few women as well and entered relationships with other women. So his entirety of his life shows exactly what bisexuality is. And the way his legacy has been shown after that shows exactly what bi-erasure is.
Yeah.
And I think that was a really interesting learning experience for me as well. Like, obviously I learned about that after I came out, but to see that, I'm like, so that's what happened. This is exactly what bi-erasure does.
Because his obituary, written by the other members of Queen, described him as bisexual, because that's how he described himself to his bandmates. And it's very glossed over in the new film, Bohemian Rhapsody, that he tells Mary Austin, I think I'm bi, and then she says, oh no, Freddie, darling, you're gay. And which is an experience that a lot of bi people have, but then the film just kind of like, no, she said he's gay, so he's gay.
Which is such a shame, because I think that is exactly the bi experience. And it's something that they should have unpicked, and I think it shows that even someone that you're so close to, like he was with Mary Austin, because that is how it played out, and someone, even when you're so close to someone, they can still erase your identity. And I think that would have been something that would have been nice to pick up on.
Definitely.
But yeah, that's why I love Freddie Mercury.
So are there any other bi-historical figures that you love?
I think my ones were mainly Freddie Mercury and Frida Kahlo. I think Janelle Monáe is also great. I think the way that they're so open about their queerness in their music, and it's almost like everything they do is a love letter to being pansexual and to being gender non-conforming and being non-binary and just being so open about who they are and being unashamedly black as well. It's just so lovely to see that overlapping identity. I know they're not necessarily a historical figure, but
they will be.
They will be.
I think for me, one of my other favourite historical figures, this is so cliche, but it's William Shakespeare. He was like very bi, which again gets very erased. He's only ever spoken about in terms of his wife, Anne Hathaway, but he had a lot of affairs with men. He wrote sonnets about men, and if you look at his plays, he explores queerness a lot in his plays. You know, you have people passing as like the different gender and getting into like relationships with people. You have queerness explored through like magical realness in Midsummer Night's Dream. The bi-erasure is so strong with William Shakespeare that there's this like theory that he was multiple people writing under one name, because, you know, it was women writing the sonnets about men and it was men writing the sonnets and plays about women, because obviously it couldn't just be one man writing about men and women. When we also know that William Shakespeare was a player, because like he cheated on his wife a lot. He had a mistress. He wrote a sonnet about his mistress who was a black woman. He wrote sonnets about his mistress who was a man. Would you call them a mister?
I don't
know. So, you know, he was a slutty, messy bi, and we should appreciate him in all that glory. So William Shakespeare is one of my favourite bisexual historical figures as well.
So is there anyone else that you want to talk about?
Yeah, so one last one, while we're talking about historical bi men, is Casanova. So Casanova is often portrayed in history as being like the ultimate ladies' man. You know, he was romancing women all over Europe, he was stealing people's wives, he was just, you know, seduction connoisseur. But he was also bisexual. He had affairs with men, he seduced men, he was like seducing men in the High Court, he was seducing women in the High Court. He was an unstoppable force of bisexual energy. And I find it really funny that he's used as kind of this heterosexual, like, male, I guess, idol in a way, where it's like, if a guy is like really smooth with women, they're like, oh, you're such a Casanova. Whereas like, no, Casanova, he was smooth with men and women, and maybe people of all genders, we don't know. That's not really recorded back in that time. So he's never my favourite historical figures, just because his image has been like, again, misappropriated into something it wasn't, as like a ladies' man. He was at everyone's man. So thanks for watching. Tell us in the comments below who your favourite bi historic figures are, or your current favourite bi figures, like Janelle Monáe, who are going to be historic figures
in the future. Make sure you like and subscribe, and we'll see you in the next episode.
Bye!